what social anxiety is, some of the symptoms of it, potential ways that we can reduce it. I have an activity that we can go over, provide some coping skills, and then answer any questions and provide some resources for everyone. So if there's any questions during, feel free to just stop me, or my email will be at the end and you can go ahead and email for some additional resources. Okay, so starting off with what is social anxiety. Social anxiety can be described as an intense fear or worry of social situations in which an individual may be scrutinized by others or just be scared in general. Some examples of this would be meeting new people, talking to friends or coworkers, expressing opinions, and going to any social events. So then this would be applicable for careers such as like networking or job interviews and things like that. So a lot of times people do not know that anxiety also comes with some physical symptoms. And so we don't really recognize some of those things that happen when we're experiencing anxiousness. So some basic physical symptoms are blushing, fast heart rate, shaking and trembling, sweating, or potentially having an upset stomach. And so I wanted to address the difference between stress and anxiety, particularly because I think a lot of times we use these interchangeably and they're actually not. So stress is something that everyone experiences along with sometimes feelings of anxiousness. However, they're a little different. So generally anxiety is internal, meaning that it is actually your reaction to stress. It usually involves in persistent feeling of apprehension or dread to partake in whatever the social activity is. And this dread and apprehension doesn't normally go away, and it ultimately interferes with how you live your life. It also is constant, even if there is no immediate threat. So it kind of just makes us think that we're in a dangerous situation when we're actually not. And then talking about stress is generally a response to an external cause. So an example of this would be maybe taking a big test, maybe you're arguing with a friend. Those situations would provoke stress. And normally stress goes away after the situation has been resolved. So maybe this event has already happened, you've already taken the test, and the stress then goes away because that event is over. Also, it can be positive or negative. It may inspire you to meet a deadline, or it can cause you to lose. So social anxiety is relevant to your career because, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to do a lot of social things at networking events, maybe going to conferences, or maybe you're in the business profession and you have to talk to a lot of people, which includes job fairs, interviews, presentations, any type of public speaking or cooperation with another person face-to-face might provoke some social anxiety, which is really important then for us to understand how we can cope with these events instead of avoiding them. So I have a handout in case anybody wants to take it with, and then for anyone online, you can maybe take a screenshot of it or you could email me separately and I could go ahead and email you these worksheets. But the photo on the left kind of talks about how social anxiety starts and the process that it goes through. So we start with the situation being maybe preparation for a presentation at work. So that is what the situation is, which then leads us to a potential negative past experience. So maybe you were criticized by a teacher in front of the class after giving a presentation. So that created a negative response to public speaking or giving presentations. And then in turn kind of trickles down into thoughts and makes you have thoughts like, I'm going to have trouble speaking during class, people are going to talk about me, I'm going to get critiqued really badly for this, and so, I don't want to do it. And then you also have some self-consciousness, visualizing yourself standing in front of the audience with people laughing at you or making fun of you. And so when we initially have some of these negative thoughts, it leads into some safety behaviors, and some anxiety symptoms that we had talked about earlier. So some of those physical symptoms then include like a rapid heart rate, blushing, sweating, trembling, things like that. And then some safety behaviors are things that we will do in a situation where we feel like we are at harm or that we're scared of something, we're in danger. And those behaviors are made to reduce that stress and to remove us from that situation. So some examples would be maybe obsessively going through a detailed presentation and continually working it and looking at it, taking tranquilizers, so using substances to avoid it, not taking breaks when speaking, drinking water frequently, or clearing sweat when you realize that you're having some of those physical symptoms. So it's important to reduce some of the safety behaviors that we use in social settings. So it's important that we tell our brains that we're actually safe and that we don't need to use some of those behaviors. Behaviors might include, like, maybe we avoid the social event altogether and we just don't go because we are so anxious about what's going to happen at that event. So to keep us safe, we're not going to go to it. Maybe we don't share personal information because we don't want to promote having social interactions with other people. So we just kind of keep all of those things to ourselves. Maybe overcompensating, which is kind of what I just mentioned about over prepping, over studying. Maybe you have a huge presentation coming up and you're just spending ample amounts of time to the point where it becomes impairing in other aspects of life because you're so focused on this social experience. And then also partaking in alcohol or drugs as a way to avoid some of those experiences. So we want to get to a point where we are able to recognize that we're partaking in those behaviors and then maybe reduce them so that we can pay attention to other ways that we can protect ourselves that doesn't necessarily hinder us and isn't a sense of avoidance. Okay, so some useful coping strategies that we can use are initially just keeping things in perspective. So recognizing that people pay more attention to their lives than to the lives of others. So remembering that everyone makes mistakes. You probably won't be the first person to make a mistake, and you won't be the last person to make that mistake also. And so that can kind of give you a sense of feeling like you're not the only one who has experienced this, or that maybe some of those past experiences don't necessarily correlate with future experiences. And then replacing some negative thoughts, so which is kind of part of the activity that we're going to do. So some negative thoughts that we can have are people will think I'm stupid, I'm going to humiliate myself. And so when those thoughts come up, kind of just asking yourself, do I know these things are going to happen? Do I know for a fact that people are going to think I'm stupid, or that I'm going to humiliate myself, and kind of just creating what the evidence is that you have for those things. Okay, so the activity I have, if you are watching virtually, you can go ahead and just write down some of the stuff on the left, some of those questions, and then answer them. In person, I'll pass some stuff out. Okay, so we're just going to take a few minutes. I kind of want you to just read the top of this worksheet and then think of a social situation that causes fear or anxiety and take some time to answer the questions. And then afterwards, we're kind of going to discuss it as a group and then open up to some other questions and conversation. So we'll just take a couple minutes here to go through it. extra pen if anyone in here needs one and doesn't have one. In the middle of an activity, if you wanna, I'll just hand you the paper. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on, if that's okay with everyone. So does anyone want to share what some of the thoughts they had were? Whatever their initial thought was that they wrote down. Does anyone want to share? Yeah. Okay. And so what is the negative thought you have surrounding your work performance? Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So when you were going through this worksheet, and anyone can kind of respond to this if they'd like to share their experience, do you still believe that initial negative thought to its same intensity that you did prior to doing the worksheet? No? Anyone else? Yeah. Okay.
Are being brought back up because I lost my brother in 2018.
Yeah.
He died in a horrible accident, and I was here for the last 7 years of his life. So I'm having all that happen again. I'm in the process of graduating, and I'm supposed to be moving to Japan. So now I'm faced with, is it maybe a horrible person if I continue on what I'm planning, knowing that my mom might not make it?
Okay, thank you for sharing. How did you feel this experience doing this worksheet was?
My mom was it's not something that she would ever want.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not my fault.
Right. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So that being said, with people that shared and then also maybe people that didn't share in their response to this activity, what do we think, why do we think that this is beneficial, doing this activity? In terms of focusing on social anxiety and having some of those irrational fears and thoughts coming to our mind and then automatically believing them. How could this work as a good coping skill for us in the future? Yeah. Yeah, so it maybe you can, in a calm mind where you're not necessarily feeling that overwhelming anxiety, you can sit down and say, okay, maybe I don't have all the evidence to support this belief. Maybe the reason that I have this belief is for one time and it's irrational that I feel this way. So although it isn't going to necessarily take away the negative thought completely, it will reduce its intensity and maybe in the future then prompt you to be like, okay, in this moment, I'm thinking a little irrational because I'm feeling anxious. So how can I walk myself through that? And how can I recognize that feelings are not facts? Anyone else have anything they want to share? No. Okay. I'm going to move ahead then. So then another way, aside from this activity, that right in the moment we can reduce some anxiety is by taking in some mindfulness, breathing, grounding techniques. These activities help us stay in the present moment and focus on what's happening right now in front of us instead of focusing on all of those thoughts that are going through our head and making us anxious at the time. So focusing on your 5 senses, how is your breathing feeling? What do you see? What do you hear? And then also just taking a few deep breaths when you feel yourself experiencing those physical symptoms we discussed. So maybe that rapid heart rate or that sweating, anything like that, just taking a moment, just breathe in and breathe out and kind of reground yourself. There's a link on this video. We don't necessarily have to watch it. I don't know how it works with the technology, but it's just a video link to kind of someone walking you through square breathing and what some breathing exercises look like that you could just get on your own. So again, my information will be up on the end. If this is something that you would like me to send you the link to, I would be more than happy to do that and provide you some of the resources that we talked about today. Just a quick 5-minute video, and it just teaches you how to do it with someone walking you through, and then you can hopefully be able to do it on your own. So then taking a deeper dive into grounding techniques, the most common grounding technique that we talk about with people when experiencing anxiety is the 5 senses grounding technique. So it kind of goes through sight, colors in the room, the things that you see around you in current moment, things that you can feel. Maybe it's a fidget, maybe it is your handwriting. For me, it's this little clicker because I have it in my hand, and this would be a social event for me. Sound, maybe you hear music, maybe you hear people in the classroom next to us, anything like that. Smells, maybe you smell essential oils or you smell natural scent of the room, you smell nature. And then taste, if you taste things like peppermint, just taking a refreshing drink of water, tasting something sweet or sour. And the purpose for doing these grounding techniques is that it really just puts you into the present moment, and it helps you stop thinking about all of those other things and think about what's going on right now around you. And then in the moment that that's happening, it's also helping you calm down a little bit, and it's helping you regain consciousness to what's going on. And it's really beneficial when we're experiencing some of those high stressful moments. Okay, so that basically wraps up all of the psycho and education aspect that I wanted to provide you guys. We're going to jump into resources now, some things that you can do on your own. So you can download the WellTrack app, which is the app that is free to Owens students and staff. You just enter your Owens email address and information, provides different resources and courses and tools to assess your mental health. So the links that I also have on here just have a link to the WellTrack app in general, if you're using like a desktop version, but then there's also a link to like specific courses and videos you can go through. They have a whole course on anxiety and coping skills for that, and it goes through deep breathing and some of challenging those negative thoughts. They're all super short, like 5-minute videos to just watch if you want to gain some new coping skills or whatever. And I also have a handout at the end that has a bunch of different ideas of coping skills if you haven't been able to find one that works for you yet. And then I also have some local and national resources. So Counseling Services is Veterans Hall 104. If you're interested in making an appointment, that is the main phone line. And then you can also email counselingservices@owens.edu, and that will take you to someone who can schedule you with an intake appointment. Nationally, we have the National Free Confidential Crisis Text Line, 741-741. So in the sense, or in the occurrence that you are in a crisis, this would be beneficial. Also the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and then Owens Police. Okay, so that is all. And like I said, if anyone wants any of the information that I have provided today, or some of the links and stuff that we weren't able to click on due to technology reasons, I would be more than happy to send those your way. And then for the people in the room, I have a bunch of extra handouts and stuff if you want to take them home, provide them to friends or family. Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for being present with me and listening.